All right. So as said, I'm Xian Horn. I'm a Jewish woman. I'm going to do a description of myself briefly for those online, and I'll try to do descriptions of the slides as well. I'm a Jewish woman, or Chinese and Jewish woman with cerebral palsy. I traverse the world with these, right now, New York black poles, sometimes shiny ski poles. Today I'm wearing electric blue with animal print, and I'm seated in a white chair. So welcome. This is going to be a little bit of a 101, but also I'm assuming everybody's here because they care. And so I'm also not going, and I want this to be kind of an ask me anything. If anything I say isn't clear or you have any follow-ups, I will let you know that there's a version of this that I'm designing that's 4 hours long. So this is going to be kind of a lightning version of what I've been thinking about for more than 10 years as a person with lived experience of disability that's both been a journalist and had myself, featured in articles that either did or did not represent who I was or did not feel authentic to my experience or what I had said in that. So this is sort of the inspiration is realizing that people want to represent disability. I believe that, but they may not know how to do it, or they don't even realize when they are sort of marginalizing the community they're trying to represent. So that's the inspiration. Let's get to the next slides. Here's some of the advocacy that I've done. And, obviously we're at A11Y. I've been a member here since at least 2016. So it's an honor for me to support these guys, and for them to support me is such a joy. So some of the tech aspects of what I've done, I've judged an assistive technology competition through AT&T, worked with Amazon, Apple, Microsoft. I've done transportation advocacy, architectural advocacy, any kind of accessibility, really. And so I think we can get to the next slide. And this isn't a perfect do's and don'ts list, but I did a version of this in July and realized that I didn't actually say the do's and don'ts when I did this. So I wanted it to be clear. And some of this is Captain Obvious. When I say, don't assume that you're better, obviously nobody thinks that they're assuming that they're better, but I'm going to give you an example of a time that happened to me. I personally, and I see a lot of DEI spaces use this term, differently abled. I personally find it so kit-glovey and almost as it, feeding into the idea that there's something wrong with disability. And so I don't enjoy it. And I was explaining that to somebody, and they said, oh, but this Paralympian I follow on Instagram uses it all the time, so it's okay. I completely understand, and I'm going to say that these are only, what I'm sharing with you is the pervasive idea among disability advocates. There are going to be people, different places in their disability journey. You will still sometimes hear the H word. It's usually people over 55. You will still hear people using all different types of terms for different reasons. You hear special needs a lot from parents and educators, but I will tell you, disability advocates and adults tend not to like it because everybody has special needs, so it doesn't really tell us anything. I liked it as an only child, I'll tell you that much, because I said, oh, of course I'm special. But I've come around to realize, obviously, as I've done more advocacy, first of all, I think it's just important to own the word disability and to see it as empowering. That, I have a self-esteem background as well, which wasn't on that list today, but, I do think that anyway. So what I'm sharing with you is not going to be everyone's experience, but I do think that it is going to tell you the majority of people that I know how they do feel about certain words and things. And we do have a one sheet, by the way, that will be available for you. I had it as a QR code. It's not working. But you can have, kind of a list of sort of the real no-no words, there will always be ones that are kind of specific to different communities. So of course, we're never going to get it perfect. There's always going to be somebody that doesn't feel represented, and that's why you have conversations. And people ask me all the time, what do I say, what words do I use? And I say, ask the person in front of you. And so that it seems Captain Obvious, but I wonder if anyone has questions as they're looking at this list before we get to the next one. I think that for the most part, as long as you're looking at that person in front of you sort of as an equal, you probably will get things more correct than it. I think with representation, oftentimes the disability community is either put on a pedestal as superhuman, or there's this sort of patronizing thing of putting people below you. I remember being on a New York City street, and a woman, I had just left the bank, and she's like, "You're doing great." And I said, "So are you." And her face fell. And in that moment, what that showed me is she didn't see herself as my equal or me as her equal, because then, anyway, I would think that if she did, she wouldn't have taken that to be anything negative or be surprised by that. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. So we're going to go through some examples at this point. And this was a very famous example. Did anyone see this? It made the rounds on Twitter and a few other places. And I will tell you, the previous version of this I did mostly for journalists. And so we did a lot of journalism examples. Tonight, there's going to be a combination of print, TV clips, and commercials. Just for everyone on the live stream and anyone who can't see it, what I'm showing is an Economist cover that is, it says why Biden should resign, and it has a walker with the United States of America, that famous insignia in the front. This made quite a splash, even among people who are not disability advocates, because I think even if you're not, there's an ageism component to this. And so I'm curious if anyone wants to share why they like or dislike this. That's another thing. I kind of know how I feel about it, and I will share that with you, but I'm trying not to influence your reaction to it, so we can have a genuine conversation about it. I found it interesting for a number of reasons. One is, I think, with Biden, a lot of the concern was his sort of mental acuity. And so I thought it was interesting. Obviously, a lot of times walkers are associated with age, but not necessarily. So I thought it was kind of a big leap to make, but I think you're right that it was meant to be provocative. And obviously, it is a very, even the title is why Biden must withdraw. It's not even should he, it's a statement. And I think they tried to make a statement with this visual. I will tell you, I thought it was very interesting because I wanted to see how people were reacting to it. And I will say what I did see for the most part was people saying unfollow, unfollow, unfollow to The Economist, because people saw it, if they weren't seeing it as ableism, they were seeing it as ageism. And then one person who didn't have that just said brutal. So, I mean, people were having very strong reactions, right? I'm going to call on you at this point. And your name?
I'm Jake.
Hi, Jake.
So the ableism piece was what I was going to say. It's like a clear sign of ableism, right? And I was thinking about this as time was going on in the last 5 minutes. I don't think I've ever seen Biden use a walker, in which case,
right,
obviously, like that is A, ableist, but B, a very assumptive thing to put as the image.
But here's another aspect to this, by the way. I think this is true a lot of times in media, that you have this idea too that there's something iconic about the wheelchair. There's something iconic about a walker that connotes disability in a way that invisible disabilities, or non-apparent disabilities, I should say, would not be, right? It's a harder visual to sell, right? And there have been times in my life where I was literally approached by one of the most famous art schools in and asked if I would appear in a wheelchair. By the way, I do use a wheelchair at the airport, but and at Disney, or any place where it's really big and there's a lot of walking, like a museum. But I'm not a wheelchair user, and they wanted a shot of me doing a 360 wheelie, which, first of all, is very dangerous, I think, even for wheelchair users. But the fact that they, seek me out on Instagram when there are countless wheelchair users they could have approached, was kind of interesting. But they were so focused, it seemed, on this visual of the wheelchair. So there have been times in my life where I almost felt like I wasn't disabled enough for media. And I'm someone that has a very apparent disability. So I'm sure I'm, if that's how I feel. But the point being that I think there is almost an iconic aspect to this, love it or hate it, that I think a lot of press and a lot of media do find it easier to kind of convey disability through these kind of more obvious tropes. We have a lot more to go through, and I want to get people home if they're debating or whatever you're doing. So yes. So I will tell you, but before I was a disability advocate, when I was just a normal old Shawnee, I remember going to Comic-Con because my cousin had an extra ticket. Never seen Glee in my life. This was the season 2, episode 1, the first episode that they were showing of the season. And this is a very small clip of it because we don't have a lot of time. But this is a character. I don't even know. I think his name is Artie. Okay. I never watched Glee because of this clip, so I do apologize for anyone. But this is a character that is played by someone not in a wheelchair, but he's a wheelchair user in this, and this is a fantasy sequence. He has a crush on somebody, and he's imagining dancing for her or with her. But here we go.
All I want to do is dance.
We can dance if we want to. We can leave the old friends behind. Cause your friends don't dance, and if they don't dance, well, they're no friends of mine. Oh, we can dance, oh, we can dance. Everybody's taking the chance. Oh, well, it's safe to dance. Oh, yes, it's safe to dance. Oh, well, it's safe to dance. Oh, well, it's safe to dance. Oh, it's safe to dance. It's safe to dance. It's safe to dance. It's safe to dance.
Well, I'm hearing audible sighs and groans. So I would love to hear from those people first. Why are you groaning? I think I might know why, but I don't want to say.
Thank you. Hi, this is Jennifer. Everyone's cheering and happy, and it's very upbeat when he's dancing, and then his face and the sort of tone and just the way the camera angle even is, just is, now we're sad. It's very upsetting.
Yeah, I found out later that this episode was directed by Joss Whedon, who's not one of my favorite people, so I wasn't that surprised after I figured that out. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think I wasn't even a disability advocate at the time, but I just couldn't believe. I felt like maybe they put it in for a few reasons, maybe to justify why they hired someone without a disability to play that character, but the idea that somebody in a wheelchair would have to desire to dance, or when he's thinking about his crush, the only way that he can woo her is out of the wheelchair, I found rather repugnant. So that was one of the reasons why outside of this episode, I don't think I've seen, the Britney episode. I did see the Britney episode. But outside of the Britney episode, I've not seen another episode of Glee because I was like, that's enough for me. Personally, that was enough to put me off of it till now. Any other thoughts and questions? Okay, I see a hand.
Hi, I'm Flip. Hi, Mirabai. I think there's been a difference in the way that representation has rolled out across different disability classes.
Yeah.
And so
Keep
maybe
in mind,
that's
this was
sort of
2011 too. Yeah,
Mhm.
I forgot to mention that. We should also say this was a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah, but even that's not that long ago, right? Like John Wick 2, I think, had a hearing actor playing a deaf actor, and that was probably like 2016 or something. So yeah, but like it feels like, I don't know. That's just one of those things where it's like,
Yeah.
more progress in some places, less in others.
Right, and they did hire a character called Becky who had Down syndrome for later episodes. We could debate how well she, was represented. But again, I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to comment on that stuff. But yeah, other thoughts before we move on? Because again, we have a lot of examples to go through. But also would love to hear, does anyone think that this is good? I'm trying not to influence you, but I think this is one that I had a very strong reaction to. So it is hard. I assume everyone here knows Nike. Do we all know Nike? Okay. So this is Justin Gallegos. But Justin Gallegos was the first runner with CP to get a contract with Nike. And they decided to, film announcing that. They surprised him to announce it. But, here we go. Justin Gallegos suffers from cerebral palsy. So I think we can also skip to the end on this one when he's receiving the contract. Yeah, you could go a little further, like maybe 2/3. Yeah. So he's very overcome with emotion when they made this announcement to him, and then he's running away. And falls to the ground. And this is a genuine moment. I think, yeah, so, and he's sobbing. I think we can cut it here, Ben. Thank you for being flexible. I'd love some first reactions to it. Oh, you definitely raised your hand for that one.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you say your name again? Sorry.
Yeah, Katie. My hackles went up when they said that he suffers from cerebral palsy. I'm newer to the accessibility space, but I know that's a big no-no. So
yeah. And so if you saw in the do's and don'ts I had avoid loaded language, I would consider suffers from or battles. That's loaded language where you're making a big assumption with the descriptors there.
yeah.
And they did get called out for it as well by quite a few people. And it's interesting because Forbes came to me and they asked me to write something, and I think they thought I was going to write this glowing, wonderful thing. Well, and that's not what happened. And we can send out the resource guide I have where I have a whole article. I had a lot to say about this. And it had nothing to do with Justin Gallegos. I think he's absolutely wonderful. And that's why I felt like he was robbed in a sense of, for me, actually, before I get into my opinion, I want to hear from at least one more person.
Hello.
Hi, Gabriel.
My name is Gabriel. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
It gave very much so the the hope core, like, oh, he couldn't have done this. Like, it's so like beautiful that like we're giving this opportunity because like when it's like he's existing and chasing his dreams, and it doesn't need, it's the look down upon thing of like,
right, back to what we were talking about. But here's the other thing, this guy's a runner, he's fast, and everything about this ad is so slow and kind of weepy, and it's real. I'm not trying to take away from the fact that obviously they filmed a real moment. But for me, when I think of Nike, I think of sweat and like, you know, sports bra and like superhuman, fine, you know, like, but I just felt like he didn't get the usual Nike swag treatment with this ad. So that was how I felt about it, and I wrote about it. Please, hi.
To go off of what Gabriel was saying, it felt very much like Nike was portraying themselves as like a savior.
Yeah.
Complex,
Totally.
which I like really didn't like what you were saying, Gabriel, like they could not have done this without us, Nike. We are so good for doing this. It just felt very like pat themselves on the back.
Yeah, and almost like they wanted to tear jerk. We have another hand here.
I'm Nora. I'm curious if the contract had weight to it, like if he's being compensated in the way non-disabled athletes are, if he's getting like the sneakers and the outfits, or if this was just a use him for good media.
Yeah.
So,
By the way, they had other ads with him that had a totally different energy after this, so maybe they got the memo. So I do want to be fair to them, and part of why we're going to part two, it's the Willem Dafoe. Has anyone been watching the Paralympics or the Olympics at all? This played a lot. It's Willem Dafoe, I think, is narrating it. I just wanted to compare. I actually think that to me, this is the one. We're only going to play about 30 seconds of it, and I would do the second half because that's when. Anyway, I'll explain later.
Delusional. I'm maniacal. You think I'm a bad person?
Now the messaging here. Can you guys hear this?
Tell me, I think I'm better than everyone else. I want to take what's yours and never give it back. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine.
We could have a whole different discussion about the dialogue in here, but that's not really wrong.
Am I a bad person? Tell me, am I? Does that make me a bad person? Tell me, does it?
So now we could have a whole discussion about how much therapy Willem Dafoe's character needs in this, and maybe how healthy it is to be an Olympian emotionally. But what I actually, let's hear from you guys. It's hard for me to hold back, but I will for the moment. I would love to hear any thoughts about this commercial.
Yeah, I'm other Gabriel.
No, oh, hey,
Oh, yeah.
Gabriel number 2 or number 1.
Well, as compared to the other ad, this one feels like everyone's on the same emotional level. There's no slow heartstrings being pulled by the music.
Right.
And in the framing, all of the athletes are in a moment of elation doing their sport or just after a win. So this one feels more level.
Right. And and I think it's important to note that I realized even just last night that I don't want to see this thing only happen during the Paralympics, because that's where I've been seeing almost equal billing in these ads, or more Paralympians being featured in a TJ Maxx ad, for example, recently. And why do we have to wait only every 4 years for that to happen? But I thought that this was much more kind of what I had in mind when I was talking about the Nike swag factor. I think you definitely see it in sort of equal measure here. And I think that's the reason why, is what you said. Gabriel, the other Gabriel, would you like to add to that?
Thank you. Hello again, it's Gabriel.
Hi.
I think what I noticed was all of the slower panning shots and like slow-mo and like the most time, it was all seemingly able-bodied people. Yeah. And then we got blips in the end when they were doing like as many different sports categories as they could. just like the time imbalance of screening is what I noticed from that.
Oh, that is true. Although I do think toward the end it was sort of flipping back and forth, which I did like. But I agree with you. There could be more. There could always be more. Yeah. We like that. Okay, so next slide. No, so we're going to look for Jessica Long, Toyota.
Mrs. Long?
Yes?
We've found a baby girl for your adoption, but there's some things you need to know. She's in Siberia, and she was born with a rare condition. Her legs will need to be amputated. I know this is difficult to hear. Her life, it won't be easy. Mrs. Long?
It might not be easy, but it'll be amazing. I can't wait to meet her.
We believe there is hope and strength in all of us. Toyota, proud partner of Team USA.
So that was 2021, as you may have seen. I would love some first reactions here from the wonderful audience. Thank you you've been great participators.
Is Gabriel again?
Yeah. Hi, Gabriel, number 2.
On an unrelated note, I did like the the shot where she goes under the water and the crowd grows each time.
Oh, that's an interesting
That was pretty cool. But this is one on the small seaside, but this one feels like it's about the person's story and she's swimming through her own life story, as opposed to in the other one, the person's doing their own thing and they're being given a gift by the company. So
yeah,
this does feel different.
Well, yeah, thanks for sharing. Any other thoughts? Oh, hello in the back.
My name is Aurelia. Good evening.
Oh, and should we do a description for anyone that couldn't see what was in that ad? If any of us want to do a description of the commercial, I realize I didn't do that for this one. But basically, Olympian or Paralympian Jessica Long is sort of swimming through aspects of her life or memories of her life. Go for it. Go for it. I just realized that we want to give context to the audience.
My thought here is that I don't have any disabilities, and to ask me what I think about how I feel about this, I feel like I should be asking someone that is in that community. And
That's fair.
How dare I say that's unjust? How would I know? I don't walk in those shoes. I can be an ally and an advocate.
Now, you're everybody's dream, that you're not assuming anything and you're leaving it to us, which unfortunately and fortunately, it happens in different measure, right? So thank you for saying that. But you're still allowed to have a reaction also.
Yeah. I mean, my reaction when I've seen this before, I'm a crier. I cried.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, no, I thought it was a great story. And being in America, where I don't look like most of the other people in everything that I do, school, work, church, I think it's important when you can see people that look like you. It really is important for someone that is not mainstream to see that.
Right.
Whether it's, however they're different from what the mainstream is.
Right. I mean, I can tell you, growing up as an only child, half Asian, Jewish, and traversing the world with 2 big, very obvious ski poles, I never expected to be represented on TV, honestly. I never expected to see myself unless it was me, because I'm so niche, right? All those intersections of who I am. But that being said, I've seen over time what it has meant to other Asian women on poles, and maybe they're not ski poles, but they might have, other assistive devices, and they reach out to me and they say, because of you, I started my own business because you did it. So absolutely, I think that is so key. I do want to say to you that my reaction, and it was important for me in doing this, that we didn't just have good examples and bad examples. For me, this is a kind of meh example, and here's why. I personally found it weird that she was swimming in this murky water through her life. And yes, she's a swimmer, but it seemed a little dark to me visually. And I mean, you obviously involve the mom, which is sweet. And this is part of her story. I'm guessing that they told this is what happened to her. I was a little on the fence about this one. I mean, I don't think, you know, obviously it's not just about whether it's cancelable or not. I was kind of like, okay, but I thought they could do better just because I felt like I would have rather hear that story from her or from her parents rather than this whole reenactment personally. But I deliberately put this there because I didn't think of it necessarily as a good or bad example for me personally. But I will tell you, when I did this in July and we had a panel, there were a couple people on the panel who loved it and a couple people who didn't. And I think that's okay. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to include it. Okay, I thought it was important that obviously this is A11Y, you know, tech focus. So I thought it'd be cool to have two different tech examples here.
My name is Grover. Sean. My name is Ian. I'm Taylor.
My name is Owen, and I am 9.5 years old.
So Owen was born with a rare genetic disorder called Escobar syndrome.
He's had 33 surgeries to date.
I love video games, my friends, my family, and again, video games.
It's his way of interacting with his friends when he can't physically otherwise do it.
What I like about the adaptive controller is now everyone can play. You can just say, all right, that's that button, that's that button, that's that button. Perfect.
One of the biggest fears early on is, how will Owen be viewed by the other kids? He's not different when he plays.
No matter how your body is or how fast you are, you can play. It's a really good thing to have in this world.
Thoughts? Yeah.
Hello, I'm Jake.
Hi, Jake.
These are all tearjerkers. I thought one of the first things that came to my mind was that it was pretty empowering, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in if people like didn't love this one. I have to be honest, I kind of liked it. And again, like the empowerment, the cheering. There was obviously talk of disabilities, like there was a pretty clear message.
Mm-hmm.
I think hearing from parents is a solid POV. Not sure how educated like those parents were, but I do think that personal aspect to it was pretty important.
Oh, hello.
Hi, it's Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
I really connect with music in all of these, and it really bothers me when the music is trying to draw your emotion, and it isn't about just
where it
telling a
feels
story.
manipulative,
Yes,
right?
yes, thank you. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. And this felt just kind of neutral. I mean, it was just pleasant, and it wasn't trying to do that. It was just telling a story, and if it impacts you emotionally, it's about what you're hearing from the kids and the parents.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Any other thoughts? Oh, hi.
Hi,
Hello.
Katie. So I liked it. That was Microsoft?
Yes.
So I felt like Microsoft was showing that thing with universal design where if you can't give someone the exact same experience with like that tool, you can give them something as similar as possible. So I felt like they were showing that, which I thought was really nice.
Thank you for sharing. So, do you have a thought?
I have a small comment, but you know,
good. We want this.
This is Thomas. I
All
think one of the
there's no
things
such thing as small comments. Go ahead.
interesting in the video is that the product itself, you know, exists as one thing that you buy. It has a price point, but slightly in that video, you do see one of the children using like a joystick, like an additional joystick. That was just an interesting thing from working with Sam Berman on my team at my company to look into the details of the product that actually to make the product work, right, for specific abilities, it has to have additional things purchased. So not really taking away from the idea of the video, but it is sort of how do you describe that? And actually when you're promoting a product or promoting a product that is universal design, but it requires maybe additional buttons that cost hundreds of dollars more, it is complicated. So, you know, I really applaud the idea, but then there is some other things behind that for actually making that solution functional.
I'm so happy you said that, because I would not have thought of that. Obviously not in, you know, product sales, so didn't I that. But I think you're helping kind of tee up. I will say that this is another one where it's good, but one of the moments that stuck out to me is he said, the father says he's not different when he plays. But because there was probably more to that conversation, my first question is, well, what's wrong with being different? So that was I love the controller. This was a Super Bowl ad. It was a big hit for them, you know, and I think it was almost a slam dunk. For me, I probably would have loved to, when I think of video games, it's sort of similar to sport. Like I think, you know, things are fast, and this was more cutesy. They went more cutesy because it's, you know, kids, and I loved hearing from the kids, but I actually would have loved to only hear from the kids. I actually thought that the father, I mean, of course it makes sense, right? The parents are the ones buying the controller, and, you know, the parents are the ones that bring this into their home and make things accessible for their kids. So, you know, but I just felt in that little thing, it's almost perfect, but I definitely, I thought, why not make it as competitive and fun as you would any other video game commercial, where I feel like it would be more edgy. Generally, I would think that, anyway, but that's just, again, me being nitpicky maybe. But since this is my presentation, I get to tell you what I think. All right, anyway, moving on to the next one.
I'm what's called a coda. My parents were both born deaf. I was not. When people in the hearing world learn that about me, they always want to know more.
You start out your forehead and then go out with your hand.
I've always had one foot in the deaf world and one in the hearing world. I translated a lot for my parents. It made us closer. Now that it's been over a year since we've seen each other in person, communication is more important than ever, especially with this kind.
Who is that, Owen? Who is that? That's you!
It's their first time being grandparents, so they don't want to miss a single moment. And I don't either. We can't wait for you to meet him.
Since we don't have a ton of time, I'll say I put this in there to show, and also tech to tech, that you can do heartwarming without being schmaltzy. I think this is great in terms of storytelling. I think it is very touching, and I think it's as perfect of an ad as I've seen for me personally. And so bravo to Google. And since we have two more clips, I think we're just gonna skip one of the two, but I will describe it for you guys, okay? All right, so we're gonna skip the really bad example where you know this one. Do you wanna play like 10 seconds of it? Okay, no, we don't have to. We don't have to. Should I just say what happens? All right, so spoiler, because we don't have time. This is a World Syndrome Day ad done by a Down syndrome organization where they have Olivia Wilde for some reason enacting all the things that this girl with Down syndrome would like to do. It's just Olivia Wilde instead. So I'm kind of glad we're skipping it, actually, to be honest. All right, so now, 8 years later, the same organization got some memos, got it together, and I think did much better. This is the one that we will end on, and we can always talk about this offline if you guys.
Hey bartender, you assume that I cannot drink a margarita, so you don't serve me a margarita? So I don't drink a margarita. Your assumption becomes reality. And parents, you assume that I cannot live on my own, so you don't encourage me to live on my own, so I don't live on my own. Coach, you assume that I cannot hit harder, so you don't train me to hit harder, so I don't hit harder. And teacher, you assume that I cannot learn Shakespeare, so you don't teach me Shakespeare.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
So I don't learn Shakespeare. E-I-E-I-O. But hey, if all your assumptions become reality, then assume that I can drink a margarita. So you serve me a margarita, so I drink a margarita. Assume that I can live on my own, so I live on my own. Assume that I can hit harder, so I hit harder. Assume that I can learn Shakespeare. So, what fools these mortals be? I learned fucking Shakespeare. You assume I can swear, right? Assume that I can do that job, that I can go to parties, that I can have sex, that I can be on stage. Assume that I can. So maybe I will.
By the way, fun fact, I met her last night. So I was like, you're in my presentation. Oh my God, you're real. She was fantastic. And she was actually the host last night. She emceed the entire event. So take that. Yeah. Do you think we could go over 5 so we could get some reactions? Is that okay? Is everyone okay with that? Okay. So thoughts, feelings.
My name's Gamery. Don't try to look that up. I loved it. I think because it was so in your face. And I think sometimes there's a fear.
Yeah.
I'm new to the accessibility space, just for disclosure, but I have worked in populations forever, as long as I can remember. And I know there's a nervousness. Like some people, it's like you kill it with kindness. So right, so they're just so they don't do anything at all.
Right.
Yeah, right.
They're afraid to try.
They're afraid, so they don't do anything. And I find with our clients, a lot of the times I start there because there's a fear to engage even this space that they're going to screw up or they're going to get sued or the brand is going to get tweeted or canceled. So the answer sometimes, unfortunately, to do nothing at all.
Right.
So I mean, I remember this coming on the television. I was with my 16-year-old son, and I was left off the couch. First of all, I love that girl. Like I want to be that girl, you know, like she's like so kick-ass. It's just like crazy. But I think sometimes it's needed.
Yeah.
Sometimes we pussyfoot around things and we try. So I think some of these ads, I'd love to see the creative briefs.
Yeah.
To understand what they were thinking, because I don't think they were. Nobody wants to get canceled. Nobody wants not to. So I'd love to see the creative briefs.
They're doing something
correct.
Great,
so I'd really love to. What you're doing is so important. But this one, I literally leapt off my couch, and then I Googled it, and I have it.
Yeah.
So,
amazing.
But I mean, I did you fangirl? Because I mean,
oh my God,
I was
totally
just like this girl. So
she was very nice about it, but I was not.
And I think
cool
the first one I saw didn't say the sex part, and then I YouTubed him with my 16 and 17-year-old boy, and he's looking at me like, and I'm like, that's up to you what you think about that part.
Yeah.
But that was hilarious.
Yeah. No, and I mean, to your point, this is exactly why I created this. I don't know if you could call it curriculum, but why I want to do workshops like this is that I feel people want to do it. They don't know how. They're afraid to get canceled. They're afraid to say the wrong thing. And I want to say that there's more to this. We have a QR. I think we have all the ads there, but the first link is a QR code with a one sheet that gives you words to use, words not to use, why we like them. So you can look at some of the resources that we have for you. But my hope is obviously you can't solve, this kind of issue in 1 hour, but I wanted to at least create something that, gets people thinking. Any other thoughts before we say goodbye? Or questions?
It's Aurelia again. Thank you for what the last commenter said about being canceled, because like it or not, we're in a society where there are businesses, and that is a real fear. I worked in advertising for a long time. We made a lot of missteps. It wasn't the cancer culture time. It was, 15 years ago. So we would just get dinged, or the FDA would ding us. But I think something like this, dialogue, it's the only way.
Right.
We all have to keep learning. Everybody has their something that they would like to present to the world. And I think this is just great to just start talking about it, because there is a fear.
Yeah.
I've made so many mistakes in meetings at work, like pronouns, everything.
Yeah.
I've made every mistake you could possibly make socially. But I'm here to learn. And I think if we all approach it with that and just have a dialogue, it will get better.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's difficult to measure is people's intentions, right? I think if your intentions are good, allyship is not about never making mistakes. It's, okay, once I get the feedback, how do I respond? Am I defensive, or do I actually work toward trying to understand, do I hear you out and make changes? And that's why I did the side-by-side with Nike. Obviously they kind of, I think, unintentionally, and in Nike's defense, I think they contracted out that particular video, but that was the video they used to announce it. So, anyway, the point is that I think all we can do is try. And unfortunately, sometimes if you try it and you really haven't done your research, you can get canceled. And this is why I wanted to do this, is that I wanted to give you guys a framework so that we have something to work with as far as knowing what to do and not to do, because that's what I see. I see a lot of people kind of walking on eggshells, not knowing what to do, even if they want to do something. And as somebody that would like to just see more empowered representation out there, I want to demystify all of this so that we can get somewhere and that people feel comfortable trying and putting themselves out there. I know it's a tightrope walk, but I think it's really important that we do what we can. So thank you for being allies and for what you're doing, and even showing up is a form of allyship. So especially on a debate night, we were debating something very different. You just made my life. That's wonderful. That's enough for me. Okay, we're done. Okay, but also I'm going to make sure that Thomas gives everybody my information. If there's something you're working on that you're not quite sure, you want to do a sensitivity read, or you want to see how it's going, and it shouldn't just be me. I would be happy to also give you my village of people that will be your bouncers, will be your bodyguards, and help you through it. But thank you for being here and so active and present. And thank you to everyone online. Right. Were there any questions online?
So I want to first say, this is like a strength to Xian Horn as a presenter and engagement manager, that in the 9+ years of doing this meetup, I would definitely say this is the most participatory discussion we've had at this event. And this is like the strength of Xian for hosting something that's actually engaging and interesting. So honestly, thank you so much. And also thank you all so much for being inclusive. I think tonight we only have time to take one question from online because we engaged so much here in the room, but I do want to take one question from online before we
Great.
Okay. So I thought the question was great. This is from someone on YouTube. The way I acquired my disability has been a lot in the news lately and is freaking people out. FYI, childhood encephalitis. What might be some ways that I can give an alternative to the doomsday narratives or the rarity and exoticism wrongly associated with it? It can be scary, but a lot of the coverage really annoys me.
Well, actually, that is exactly why I'm so proud to be a Forbes contributor and have a platform, and why I recommend when I speak to the disability community that we shouldn't just be written about, and it shouldn't just, and I think, when I think about how I started, pitched the Dove campaign asking them to include people with disabilities in their advertising. They passed on it twice, but that video went viral because people understood what it was about. And I think at the time I was focused on what messages the beauty industry was giving us. And so I promise this is to hit, is this,
I'm
do we
not
know
sure
who
who
this
the
was?
person is.
Okay. So to their question, I think it's so important as a person with a lived experience to tell your own story and to create your own narrative. So what I would do is, I don't know if it's YouTube or TikTok or whatever you have, blog, being able to, obviously we don't all have, a Forbes platform, but being able to say, hey, listen, there's been a lot, and say what you're saying to us in a form that other people can see it so that it's coming from you. Nobody's going to tell your story like you do, and that is why you're annoyed right now, and I get it. So I think it's so important that we have more disabled journalists, more disabled media professionals. And so my advice to you is to become a creator and share your story, because that's the only way you're going to combat it, is by telling your truth the way you want to tell it. It is a great question. And actually, I want to say to that person, if you want to reach out to me to brainstorm ways that you can share your experience and not have it co-opted by someone else, I'd be so happy to support you. Great question. Yeah, thank you.
And we had so many more, but we have to wrap today.
Send them
so
to
everyone
me.
else that asked questions on the live stream or here, we'll have a little time here in the space, but Xian Horn's very reachable.
Yes, I'm accessible.
She's accessible.
Yes,
Okay.
pun intended. Yeah.
So we want to close. First, let's give a huge round of applause for Xian.
To all of you. Thank you for coming. I'm so